Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Suleiman. Today, our focus is on dead bills as we examine the executive-legislative relations in the Buhari administration. In the wake of the president's refusal to sign the Electoral Amendment Bill for the fifth time, the nature of the relationship between the President and the National Assembly has once again come under scrutiny. On the surface, things look fine between the President and the National Assembly. In fact, things look so good that some critics have called the current Assembly a rubber stamp. We didn't say so. It is the critics who say so. The Senate and the House have granted almost all the approvals the President has sought so far. But what has the National Assembly got in return? In May this year, a report by Punch newspaper says that 200 bills passed by the National Assembly was not assented by the President. The same number was also reported by the Nigerian Tribune on June 9, 2021. However, the President of the Senate, Dr. Ahmad Lawan, has contradicted their claims 6 months after. The Senate President said that President Buhari has assented to more bills than all the presidents before him. All the presidents, that is, since 1999. He said President Buhari has been the most proficient in granting assent to bills. According to him, available data on gazetted acts, that is data by the National Assembly, showed that between 2015 and 2021, President Buhari has assented to more than 84 bills, the highest since the commencement of the Fourth Republic in 1999. All other presidents have assented to fewer bills than him. President Obasanjo, 82. President Yar'Adua, 34. And President Goodluck Jonathan, 40 bills, according to Ahmad Lawan. So today we're asking a series of questions. What is the relationship between the executive and the National Assembly? And how does that relationship improve or hinder governance in Nigeria? Because all Nigerians want the dividends of democracy. Joining me on the program today are Malan Ilyasu Gadu, a former diplomat and member of the Daily Trust editorial board. Barrister Suleiman Hassan Gimba is also the Legislative Advocacy Liaison Officer, and he manages CISLAC's legislative advocacy. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. But as usual, we'll take 1 minute to bring you a roundup of politics and the news today. When we return, we get into the discussion proper. Stay with us.
The House of Representatives has passed the 2022 budget of 17.126 trillion naira against the 16.391 trillion naira presented by President Muhammad Buhari. This followed a unanimous adoption of a report laid on the floor of the House during plenary in Abuja by Chairman Appropriation Committee Mukhtar Betara. The sum of 17.1 trillion naira is 800 billion naira higher than the 16.39 trillion naira that was proposed by the executive. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, said the passage of the 2022 budget was in keeping with the new tradition of operating an annual national budget from January to December. The crisis rocking the All Progressives Congress APC in Gombe and Anambra State deepened on Tuesday with warring camps engaging in war words. In Gombe, a former governor of the state, Senator Muhammad Danjuma Koje, accused the state governor Muhammad Inuwa Yahya of persecuting him alongside his supporters. A feud has been raging between the camp of the governor and that of Koje, two-term governor of the state. Koje made the allegation through his counsels led by Barrister Herbert Unwoye alongside Barrister Luka Haruna and 7 others. In Anambra State, the crisis rocking the APC has also assumed another dimension as the Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, and the party's candidate in the November governorship election, Senator Andy Uba's faction, fight dirty over an Abuja High Court judgment. The two factions have been entrapped in a fight over who controls the party structure in the state immediately after the state's governorship election. The Ngige faction has alleged that Andy Uba is not the leader of the party, while the Uba camp insisted that he remains the party's authentic leader in the state. The All Progressives Congress APC have announced its resolve to set up budget and other committees ahead of its February National Convention. Addressing newsmen at the end of the Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee of the party held at the APC National Secretariat in Abuja, lasted for over 2 hours, and Secretary of the committee, Senator Akpanudo Edehe, said it also reviewed the activities in the last 1 year. The top echelon of the APC recently met with President Muhammadu Buhari at the State House in Abuja, where it was resolved that the party's convention will be held in February, but no specific date was agreed upon. The meeting of the Governor Mai Mala Buni-led Caretaker Committee also failed to announce a specific date for the February convention.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV, and we are discussing issues around legislative and executive relationship and how this affect governance and delivery of democracy dividends for Nigerians. And I'm joined here with Malam Ilyas Gadu and Barrister Suleiman Hassan Gimba. So, Barrister, I normally start with right, from my right, and then end on my left. So let's start with you. As someone who represents the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, and you work directly with the National Assembly as the liaison officer. There was this, the president has, this argument that the current National Assembly, as opposed to the previous one, is more or less a rubber stamp to the president. First of all, is this true? And if it is, what are the implications for Nigeria?
Okay, thank you. In your introduction, you made mention of Ahmed Lawan coming out to once defend the president, stating that he has signed 84 bills.
Yes.
So I believe the president has a spokesperson, and the legislative arm shouldn't be coming to speak on behalf of the executive. There are two different arms of government. There is also a statement by Ahmed Lawan that comes to mind. He once said that anything that comes from President Muhammadu Buhari is good for the nation. So these are not the kind of things that you would be expecting from an arm of government in support of the other.
Yes, independent of the executive.
Yes. So, and if you look at the relationship between the executive and the people, and then the legislature and the people, what it appears in reality is that the executive has a secondary relationship with the people, and then a primary relationship with the
presidency,
with the legislature. The legislature is same with them. They have a primary relationship with the executive and a secondary relationship with the people. While in reality,
what do you mean primary and secondary? Maybe
it's about priority. The people should always take precedence. So the primary relationship should be with the people, because they empower you and then you serve them in return. But when it comes to political interest, they always put the other organ above the people. So the people always play a secondary role in their thoughts.
Interesting. Thank you. Malam Ilyas, as an observer of issues and a commentator about public affairs in Nigeria in general, columnist, and all that. The previous Senate, the 8th National Assembly and the Senate in particular, it was said that they were obstructing the president's agenda. That Dr. Bukola Saraki, who was then Senate President, and Yakubu Dagara, who was then Speaker of the House, that these two people were the ones standing in the way of the president executing his agenda. Do you think there's been a difference in terms of governance, or do you think that is true, comparing now that has anything changed?
Well, first of all, I think I would like to align with my colleague here that it is not the place of the Senate President to come out in defense of the executive. Okay. I mean, maybe he may have thought
but they're of the same party.
Yeah, they're of the same party, but these are they're different functions. The Constitution says, look, you have the National Assembly, the Senate is part of the National Assembly. They are of a different, they're a different arm of government. And if there's anything to be done, it's for them to defend their own records and not to come out in defense of the executive, the president in this place. So he's on the pedestal and he's supposed to defend what he is doing and allow the presidency and the spokesman of the presidency to defend or, you know, defer or whatever it is.
But does that mean the relationship between the presidency and the National Assembly should always be one of conflict rather than
No, you see, the problem is that this is a paradox.
Okay.
It's a paradox of the need to have, you know, what is called a cordial relationship. As you rightly observed, in the first Senate or in the first tenure, there was this accusation that the 8th National Assembly was not cooperating with the president, obstructing the president. Well, that was the term used, and they were confronting the president. Don't forget that the Senate president then, Dr. Bukola Saraki, was actually from the same party as the president, and also Yakubu Dogara from also the same party, I think at some point, you know. So there were accusations that the gentlemen were using the Senate and the House of Reps to obstruct the presidency, and that, you know, it was obstructing the president from carrying out his functions and delivering the dividends of democracy. Now there was a struggle, there was an attempt to say, look, in the second assembly or ninth assembly, we are going to rectify that. The government needs to move at a faster pace, and we don't want obstructionist activities from the National Assembly. Now what we are seeing is the flip side of this relationship. Okay. Because, the president was supposed to, complain that they were not, that the executive was not being given the full cooperation by the National Assembly. So they needed a National Assembly that would cooperate with the president without having to compromise on the principles of separation of powers. But it is incongruous now that in the midst of all this, there's 200, bills that have not been assented to by Mr. President under this so-called rubber-stamped assembly. So there is something wrong here.
That figure also includes 160 bills from the previous National Assembly, that is from 2015 to 2019, and then 40 from 2019 to date.
Yeah, but it still doesn't, explain the fact that the presidency, wanted a legislature that they would work together. But the fact that, and some of these bills are key bills that are supposed to, have been smoothened in the process, the legislative process. But it's quite incongruous now that we have this relationship going on. This, especially the last one we had, which is the Electoral Bill. This is supposed to be something that, the National Assembly had convergence on. And in fact, at the beginning of it, there was that possibility that the president was going to assent, because you have Dr. Lawal and Bajamiala, Speaker Bajamiala, people who were actually working in tandem with the executive. But for this to happen shows that there is a flip side to the whole thing, and that we need to look at the whole thing critically. And for the Senate president to come out and defend and say the president had signed it, it's not his place. It's not his place. The issue is, there is something, there is something wrong, and you should explain to Nigerians why this is the way.
Thank you. For the avoidance of doubt, for the viewers out there, we actually reached out to the presidency on this program that they can come and speak on their on behalf. Or maybe as we go on, we will have to be showing that we have invited them and they didn't come, and we put an empty seat there that the Nigerians are not being attended to, because it is the duty of the media to raise questions about how society is governed. So, but that's an aside, Barrister Suleiman, the part of the argument also is the kinds of bills that have been, not just that the number of bills that have not been assented to, but the kinds of bills that have actually been assented to. that each time these are regular bills, appropriation, finance, things that are in the normal course of administration, not bills that will change, or that will advance or change situations in anywhere. Everywhere you will normally have a budget bill, right? So that one, or finance bill and so on. That there have not been, enough quality of bills coming from the executive throughout this administration. Do you agree with that?
I 100% agree.
Okay.
You see, for a start, Buhari, before he became the president, once claimed to have been the biggest victim of electoral fraud.
Okay.
Yes. So normally, having suffered 3 times and he believed he was rigged out, the first thing he will have done is to present an executive bill that will guarantee quality electoral reforms. He hasn't done that.
Okay.
Then the National Assembly did that on 2 occasions. And on both occasions, he withheld assent. So from his actions, one can conclude that he is not serious about legislating and about bringing the right changes, but he likes to push the blames on others.
Okay, but the quality of bills is not just also from the presidency, but also the ones that emanate from the National Assembly. A lot of the bills in the National Assembly are bills to establish College of Education there, bills to establish School of Health Technology there, bills to establish this and that. There haven't been too many quality bills, ground-breaking or bills that can actually change. For example, bills about, creating unemployment for 10 million people, for example, the kind of things that the APC promised. So is the National Assembly and the presidency, what's the problem?
No, I think what we have to understand is
Yes.
that, from the commencement of this assembly, the body language we got was that they are going to go for the line of least resistance.
Okay.
And, what we want is, yes, you are from the same party. The Senate President and a good many of the majority of people in the National Assembly are from the President's party. That is what Nigerians wanted, the second coming. And that's good. But again, it should not take away from the fact that we need robust debates. We need debates that will center around what the people want, improving the living conditions. And, this National Assembly, led by Dr. Ahmed Lawan, took the line of least resistance. They sort of misunderstood what they are supposed to do. They are supposed to, organize robust debate. They're supposed to go for those bills that would make quality of life meaningful for people. And that is what we expect from the legislature. Not minding the fact that they come from the same party as the president. The Nigerian people know that we have 3 arms of government. We have the executive, we have the National Assembly, and we have the judiciary. The National Assembly is the engine room of this democracy. It's supposed to come out with bills that is supposed to say to the executive, hang on, we know you have the power to execute or to bring executive bills, but we are going to do all we can to make sure that these bills that we're going to make are robustly processed and sent to you, so that at the end of the day, especially given the fact that the party that came in with the attitude to change a lot of things. And that is what we expected the National Assembly to do. But I think Ahmed Lawal misjudged, or I think he just took the line of least resistance. And that's why at the end of the day, we just end up with having tepid bills. And the only other bill that they're supposed to have done quite a lot of work on, they're supposed to have done quite a number of things, which they did to the admiration and praise of Nigerians, which is the Electoral Bill. The president has withheld assent. And this is what they're supposed to show their anger to, and go back to the people and say, look, we have done this. As my colleague here said, we want to ensure that the electoral process is improved, which is what we have done. And everybody in Nigeria is looking for that. Very, very important parts of that bill have now been thrown out by Mr. President, and the National Assembly looking like with eggs on their faces. They can't talk, they can't say anything about a bill that was painstakingly put together by majority of the people from Mr. President's party, but the National Assembly is looking tepidly on, and they're not doing anything about it. It's a betrayal of the people's cause.
No, that leads us directly to the issue of veto power. The president has veto power. So if the president withholds assent, he's not breaking the law in any way. He's just doing his job according to the mandate given to him by Nigerians, you know. But the National Assembly, they also have veto power because that's the entire essence of checks and balances. They too can override the president. So whereas all that the president needs to do is to withhold assent. If he likes, he gives reasons. If he doesn't like, he doesn't give any reasons. The National Assembly would need a certain number of, you know, of majority, a certain to win 2/3 of votes in order to be able to override the president. That's why we've not seen any too many vetoes coming from the National Assembly. So what does this say about the National Assembly specifically and about the relationship between the legislature and the executive more broadly? If we have a situation where one side can override, but the other doesn't have the resources to do that, or maybe the will or the courage to do that.
Okay. I think National Assembly has an oversight function on not just the president, but all agents of the executive. So the Constitution carefully gave each its distinct roles under Section 58. So it's within the right of the president to withhold assent or to give it. And the National Assembly's role is a bit difficult because Section 58, so 5 requires that they have 2/3 majority and not just in one chamber, but in both chambers. So the issue now comes with regards to the leadership of the House. It's not just the courage of the members, but what the leadership does. If the voting process, for instance, now is something that is going to be made public, then you have to look at the capacity now of the lawmakers. In the 8th Senate, we had people, as my colleague noted, that were capable of going head-to-head with the presidency and with their party.
But is that head-to-head always good? Because this is not an issue that started under Buhari's presidency. It was also there during Obasanjo particularly. If you remember what happened between Gali Nahaba as Speaker of the House and the presidency and President Obasanjo, but also even Dr. Chiba Okadibo and the Senate presidents, where we kept having many different people were saying that the relationship between the National Assembly and the president should be more of cooperation than fight. So going head to head, does it really benefit Nigerians?
No, I think...
Because if two elephants are fighting, wouldn't Nigerians suffer?
I think what we have to look at critically is the response of Mr. President to the Electoral Bill. And if the response is not really germane, or it's not really you know, of the quality that you expect. Mr. President has a right to withhold assent. He has a right also to say, this is the reason why, these are the reasons why I withheld assent. But if at the end of the day, the National Assembly, in its own wisdom, looks at the Mr. President's you know, responses in this case and says, look, Mr. President, you have not addressed the issue as much as possible. We're talking about bipartisanship here. We have seen legislatures around the world in which members of the legislature differ with the president. It's about democracy. It's not about, you know, one man's, you know, view or, you know, trying to pander to one man's. It's about the generality of the nation. And we're looking at an election that is going to come in 2023. We have observed some of the process, some of the lapses in the electoral process, and we, in our own wisdom, Nigerians and every other person decides that, look, we need to move on and get new things into the bill, which the National Assembly did the justice. It is the work, it's a robust work. And for the Mr. President to come out in that cavalier manner and then address that issue, the National Assembly, on behalf of the Nigerian people, ought to say, look, yes, we are from the same party, but this issue is about the Nigerian people, about the need to improve the electoral processes. And your views, Mr. President, are not germane. We need to be able to have germane reasons, or we are going to go ahead. This is the time for bipartisanship. It's not a time for APC or PDP. It's a time for the Nigerian people. This is the document that the Nigerian people have presented to the National Assembly through all kinds of, public hearings, memoranda, and all kinds of things. And if you take a random check of the feeling, the pulse of the Nigerian people, about 70 to 80% will say yes, we should go ahead with the Electoral Bill. But just because one or two provisions of the Electoral Bill, did not tally with certain, interests, narrow interests, then Mr. President, who actually, as my colleague here observed, who was a victim of that, of those electoral malpractices or processes, now at the last moment has withdrawn accent. This is a clear disappointment. And the National Assembly ought to say, look, Mr. President, yes, now, for the first time, I would have expected Ahmed Lawan and Bajamiala, Speaker Bajamia Biamila, sorry about yeah, to go. I said, Mr. President, we are not having this. We are looking at the future. We are not looking at now. We are not looking at our interests. We are looking at the interests of Nigerians. We need to improve this process. And your reasons really are not. We are going to go on ahead. It's not about fighting the president. It's about the generality of the interests of Nigerians, because we cannot afford not to have an electoral process that is fit for purpose and that is, to the interest of Nigerians.
Thank you very much for raising this issue of the interest of Nigerians. So maybe after our break, we will be looking into the roles that Nigerians as citizens and citizen groups like civil society organizations like yourself play in the legislative process, since legislation is not just about the executive and the legislature only, but we'll come to that. Maybe the relationship between the two chambers, the two arms of government, it goes beyond just passing legislation. There's also an issue of maybe appointments. For example, the National Assembly, the Senate in particular, appoints, must ratify some of the appointments of the president. In the previous assembly, we saw cases where the Senate rejected, some of the candidates submitted by the president. But in this dispensation, in the Ninth Assembly, almost all appointments by the president, except the Loretta Onoche case, have been rejected. Have been approved by the Senate. Does it mean that would that lead to better governance for Nigeria? Does it mean that the previous Senate was holding Nigeria back in any way?
No, it really doesn't mean that. The issue is the Senate is supposed to scrutinize every appointment. For instance, in the Loretta's case, they say it's against federal character to appoint her, so it's okay. So if through such rigorous scrutiny, they discover that all the proposed appointments are in the best interests of the country, then it's fine. It doesn't mean that you have to oppose an appointment where there is no reason whatsoever to oppose it.
Thank you. So we'll be but there are other issues. For example, the loans that have been approved for the president, in this Ninth Assembly, which were not approved in the previous assembly. We will look at what all of that means for Nigeria. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be taking a moment's break. When we come back, we'll continue on issues surrounding the relationship between the National Assembly and the presidency in Nigerian democracy and government. Stay with us.
The board and management of Media Trust Limited invites the general public to its annual Daily Trust Dialogue, themed 2023, The Politics, Economy and Insecurity. Date, 20th January 2022. Location, NAF Conference Center and Suites, Abuja. Time, 10 a.m. prompt. Chairman of the occasion, former Head of State, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, GCFR. Guest Speaker, Governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir Ahmed El-Rufai. Guest Speaker, Governor of Ebonyi State, Engineer David Umahi. Guest Speaker, former Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mrs. Ifueko Omoigui Okauru. Moderator, Executive Director, Daria Media Nigeria Limited, Kadaria Ahmed. The event will be transmitted live on Trust TV, and all participants must observe COVID-19 protocols and wear their face masks.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Daily Politics on Trust TV. You can follow us on all our social media platforms on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So we continue with our discussion on legislative and executive relationship. So as you were saying during the break, that it's not the issue of how many bills were assented to, whether or not a bill is assented, but the reasons given by the president for rejecting or for withholding accent. That these ones may be more important than that. Can you speak further on that?
Okay, you see, one of the reasons the president gave for rejecting the Electoral Act Amendment Bill is that it will breed corruption.
Okay.
Because then, since everyone is taking part via direct primaries, you will have a lot of people to use money to buy their votes. So I think this is something that if you look at even in elections where only a few persons take part, corruption can come in. For instance, after the 2019 general elections, Ahmed Lawan was contesting against Ndume and Senator Ogoje. So what the presidency did is they entered a null prosecute and withdrew a corruption case against Goje. After that, he stepped down for Ahmed Lawan. So this is an election where only 109 persons will take part. And still, you have seen the arm twisting that happened. Then another issue is the president gave an example with the security situation. So the message I got from that particular statement is that the president is not even confident that we are going to end our insecurity before 2023 elections. So he has already made plans that by 2023, during the primary elections, we won't have enough security apparatus to tackle insecurity because the people they won't be able to handle it. So this is a very negative statement for the people to hear from their commander-in-chief at this point in time.
The barrister is implying that the reasons given by the president are not valid for withholding accent, at least in his opinion, right? They are not strong enough for that. Do you agree?
I think so. And I even want to say that, we have to look at the Electoral Amendment Bill. It encompasses a lot of complex other issues regarding electoral process in Nigeria. And just to single out one area of it and to even, provide, answers that are not even, convincing. Because if you say, okay, because if we throw it out open directly to all the members of the party, it will breed corruption. What do we have now?
Okay.
What do we have now? Is it not the same corruption? A governor will sit in an office in the comfort of his room and select people who are going to be part of the process, and all the people are going to be his hand-picked delegates or whatever. At the end of the day, has democracy been served? That's the question. We're talking about democracy. We're talking about vigilance. Now,
but let me bring us down to the discussion on debt bills, which is what we are really concerned about. If you are having a situation where in 6 years, a president withholds accent for 200 out of 287 bills, what does that portend for the ordinary citizen in the streets?
That's what we're saying, that democracy has not been served. Okay. Most of those bills that have been, rejected or where Mr. President has, withheld accent are bills that have been painstakingly, painstakingly processed by the National Assembly. Now, of course, you have a presidential advisor on National Assembly affairs. It is the duty of that presidential advisor to go hand in hand with the National Assembly, especially given the fact that the Senate President and majority of the members of the National Assembly are from Mr. President's party. So it means that there is no connect between the President and the executive, which is made up, and the National Assembly, which is made up of members of his party majority. There's something wrong. And that's why we need the whips there. But they're working. The whips are not working on both sides. The whip on the National Assembly, from the National Assembly, and the liaison officers from the the executive. It's actually an embarrassment for Mr. President that an assembly that is composed of the majority of people from his party and that is seen to be as pliant, the most pliant National Assembly, still some of his bills, very important bills that he originated and which was robustly debated upon, was rejected. And that's, at the end of the day, it's that Nigerian people are not well served, because what we want is a democratic experience that that gives us the dividends of that democracy.
So does that say something about the process of legislation? Because sometimes, okay, you are in CISLAC. Your whole job is about improving democratic governance in the country, improving how legislations are made and so on. Am I correct?
Yes.
Good. So maybe it's about the legislative process, because you see in some countries that the real process is not just the debates on the floor of the House or the Senate, but also the back and forth between the leaders of the party, with the presidency. You see leaders of Republican Party in the Senate will be in their White House to convince the president to do that. So does that mean that these backroom channels that legislators follow to lobby either fellow legislators or to lobby people from the executive in order to get a particular bill passed, is because that is key to the legislative process in all democracies? Based on your experience in the Nigerian case, would you say that it's missing, or is
no? I doubt if lobbying is missing, because it's something that not just the lawmakers themselves do, but even civil society and private citizens. It depends on the interest a person has on a bill. Like, for instance, the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, it's a high interest bill for almost everyone. So mostly based on a position a person holds. The governors lobby, civil society lobbies, even the media to some extent based on their principles, they lobby for it. So the backroom channel is quite important, but almost everyone have access to it. There are people that you might not even know, but are either in the legislature or they are with the presidency trying to lobby for or against a bill.
So this really takes us directly to the roles that civil society have to play. Because even in this electoral amendment bill, there are those who are saying that this all shows how hollow our civil society is. That if we have a strong civil society that is deeply rooted within the society, they could have been able to mobilize, some form of citizen action for or against this bill. So as a member of that sector or section of the Nigerian society, what's your take on that?
Okay, I think the issue is, if you look at civil society generally in Nigeria, it has changed from what it was under military regime to what it is today. You don't actually need to come out on the street to protest before your voice can be heard. So, and in the process of bills, civil society is mostly involved from the beginning to the end. We submit memorandums, we engage them in roundtables, and sometimes we even draft. Personally, I have drafted, CISLAC has drafted bills and submitted to the National Assembly. You just need to have a sponsor. So, and then after that, we continue to work through the media and the grassroots, trying to mobilize people. But you hardly see the civil society now engaging in all these street protests. It's not what it used to be, really.
Thank you. But what about Nigerians themselves? Are they not too removed from the legislative process? Because in other democracies, you see situations where citizens are sending emails, they're sending letters, they're actually going
signatures
to the signatures. They're also going to the they're also going to meet the constituency offices of their respective representatives in the National Assembly to pressure them to take a particular position on particular laws. Is that also part of the problem?
I think I have to differ from, with my colleagues, on this issue, because, this is more the time that the civil society group should be more active. than even during the military. Because, they said, democracy requires constant vigilance. It's not just to say, okay, we have a democracy and then we go to sleep. No. We have to ensure that our people, the people that we elect, whether it be in the executive, in the judiciary, or in the executive, it's all in the National Assembly, do the needful. Okay. And in situations like this, it's a non-stop thing. There has to be variegated ways of ensuring that the will of the people, after all the three of them represent the people one way or the other. So there has to be variegated ways in which the people their voices have to be heard, especially on bills, especially the Electoral Amendment Bill. This is a bill that the civil society groups in Nigeria have been quite abysmally, quiet on. I don't know. And that is principally because we need to take a look at the civil society groups in Nigeria. Okay. They are actually, representing, or they are more at home representing issues that have to do with their donors, than with Nigerian people. If their donors don't say, go and do this, they don't do that. But this is something, they need to work for Nigeria and Nigerians. And this is an issue in which there's an overwhelming approval by Nigerians to have the Electoral Bill amended, the electoral process, amended for fit for purpose Nigerian, because we know this is a product of our observations over the years of the lapses, serious lapses. For instance, transmission of results through the electronic process. It's a very, very serious, very good departure from what we used to have, where we used to have soldiers and all kinds of people escorting electoral materials, which at the end of the day do not even give us the results we need. So electronic transfer is what is being done today. But I have not seen or heard the civil society groups actually come up to mobilize Nigerians, because I have been in democracies where people go door to door. They go door to door. They go, to houses and offices of certain legislators that say, you must say something, especially now that the National Assembly says it's going to go back to the people. This is where the civil society groups should not go to sleep. They should say, look, this is what we want. This represents the feeling of Nigerians, and we cannot sit down and allow you guys to do it. So that's what democracy is all about. But they have gone quiet because the mandates and the activities of the civil society groups in Nigeria actually reflects the feeling of the donors and the people who control them. So yes, that's it. And they must accept that as a lapse.
On this program, everyone is under scrutiny. Whether they're in government or outside of the government, including the media themselves, including civil society as well. I hope you have an answer ready for what he's saying.
Okay. The issue is just a search now, for instance, on Google about the Electoral Bill. Will bring you results like 70 CEOs ask National Assembly to veto president. You see a lot of civil society groups working collectively through the media. Just a search will show you that. The interest is not always about what the donor wants. For instance, at CISLAC, I have full autonomy to do what I think is right, as long as it's good for the Nigerian people. There is no way that a bill will be on the floor of the House and then CISLAC will not be invited. Some of the work we do is behind closed doors. And then sometimes in public hearings, we still go submit our memorandum and have our own argument. So if it comes to interests of donors, for instance, most donors are trying to encourage equality, diversity, and inclusion in our system.
Which is part of his argument is that the civil society groups are not engaging Nigerians, directly.
Yes.
So it's wanting to engage with the media and with the government that is concerned. But if you are not engaging with Nigerians, isn't that also the cause of least resistance because it's evidently more demanding to engage with Nigerians directly?
Okay, so one of the issues is, if you look at our literacy level and level of civic education, they're actually very poor. The majority don't even know what they want. So you have to raise awareness now, sensitize Nigerians. Let them know what is the role of a lawmaker, the role of the executive, and the role of the judiciary. Most people just want rights from their lawmaker, for instance. So they have not even interest in a bill. As a lawmaker, if a person will be coming to your house every day for the whole tenure and you keep sending him away, if you give him rice or omo during the next election, chances are that he will vote for you because they don't know such roles. So one of the things we are trying to do with the general public is educate them on the rights, on their own rights and the roles they need to play in a democracy and how to demand for better. So it's not like we are excluding Nigerians, but there are people now you can go and meet and engage them under electoral bill. They don't care what happens, or they just don't know what it is. But by sensitizing them, you can get them involved. But it's a step-by-step process. CISLAC, for instance, organizes town halls where you invite the gatekeepers, the relevant stakeholders, including religious and cultural leaders. So once you sensitize all these people and the general public about a bill now that is of interest, they will be able to pick from there.
I think from our discussion so far, the complexities of our democratic system, are beginning to come out, because if citizens are going to legislatures to demand rights or to demand money for burials or money for naming ceremonies or money for weddings, which anytime you meet with politicians, they tell you this, doesn't that have impact on the quality of the legislation that the members are going to make? Doesn't that have impact then on the relationship between legislature and the executive, and ultimately what we enjoy as dividends of democracy?
No, I think my colleague here should at least be...
Learned colleague?
Yeah, my learned... Well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer.
The rest of us are laymen.
Yeah,
okay,
we're laymen, as lawyers say.
Yeah.
But the truth about it is that there's a gap
Okay.
between the civil society groups and the people. If you look at it, it's heavily tilted towards the elitists, the elites. They place dialogue or contacts or connections with government more than with the people. And it's supposed to be, we're talking about primary responsibility and secondary responsibility. The primary responsibility of civil society, that's why it's a civil society.
Okay.
They are supposed to be embedded with the people. They are supposed to actually help the people, especially, as he rightly observed, a situation whereby civic education is very poor. They are supposed to help. That's why they are there, because they are supposed to let the people know that, look, taking rice or going to get this, from these people, it's not the thing. But you are more likely to get your dividends of democracy if you insist on the democratic process being implemented. So at the end of the day, that legislature you sent there is not just going to give you rice. Rice is not something you are looking for. You are looking for something much more fundamental to improve the quality of your life in a general sense. And that is why the civil society groups, if you leave it to the legislature, the elected officials, they won't do that. They'll look for the line of least resistance. Now that is where the civil society groups are supposed to come in. But they're more interested, so to speak, unfortunately, in relationship with the elite than with the people. And some of them feel like, look, there's an elite, they also are part of the elite. So they don't feel like, in some of the democracies, you see civil society groups going right into the grassroots there, mobilizing people, going to the town halls, going everywhere and saying, look, this thing this bill that is coming up, like what happened during the Brexit, people went right there to the farmers, to those areas that are going to be affected by the Brexit, or that feel bad about the EU policies. They went right in there. That's why there was a widespread support for the measure at the grassroots level. So this is what I expect. There shouldn't be any excuses, because this is a bill that has been in gestation for a long time. There should have been quite a lot of sensitization. And by the time these things are not reflected in what has come out between the National Assembly and the President, the civil society groups would have said, look, this is it, would have told the people that this is what's happening. There's nothing wrong in people coming out to demonstrate, but it has to be peaceful. It has to say, look, we are not happy about this because you are disenfranchising us. You are taking away our feelings about this, and we feel that this thing has to be revisited again. But the civil societies are telling you, they're just talking to the National Assembly, they're talking. It's no longer with the National Assembly, it's with the people now. That's where the civil society groups are supposed to go.
1 minute or 30 seconds.
Yes, let's make it 1 minute.
We will assume we have ended with him, but just 30 seconds.
He has misunderstood us, actually. The issue is we can be compared. It's unfair to compare Nigeria with England, for instance, where the literacy level is very high.
But doesn't government will say the same thing?
No. What I'm saying is there is no way, for instance, now you go to Jigawa and talk about the Electoral Bill without involving their traditional leaders, their religious leaders. Nobody will trust you. Nobody will listen to you. So it's not like we are targeting to the elites. But once you go to the community, there are people we call gatekeepers. They are actually the custodians of that community, and they are the ones the people trust. So you have to start with them, and they are the ones that are going to mobilize the people. It's not like we just concentrate on them and then the National Assembly. They are our door to the people.
In other words, there are complexities in making legislations, and the relationship between the executive and the president, the executive and the legislature is not a simple one. Citizens are also involved in this process. Civil societies are involved in this process. And things can only work when all parties play their part. I think that's what we can get from the discussion.
Can I give an example?
So far. I think that's enough because we
just
have to,
10 seconds.
We have to go now. Okay, 10 seconds.
Because like we had a program. The issue is, one thing I have observed is, especially with the grassroots, if you have a program now, let's say a 3-day program, you are supposed to even give these people now at the grassroots transport allowance. But if these people come today and you give them transport allowance, they will forfeit the transport allowance for the remaining 2 days. So you have to keep that transport allowance and make them come for the 3 days.
I will have to cut you short. We'll have to go at this.
So to show you how difficult it is.
The summary is fine, that the process is complex, involves civil society, citizens, legislators, and the executive. And it is better if all stand up to do their part in this process. Our democracy will be better enriched, and that's only when the gains will be showered on everyone. On this note, we end today, and we hope that tomorrow you will join us again on another edition of Daily Politics. I am Suleiman Suleiman. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.
See you tomorrow.